Hey, what's up, you guys? I'm Jaquan,
I'm Jasmine.
and welcome to the Film Spill.
So, today, guys, we're going to be reviewing a Netflix documentary called Our Father. And here is the brief summary. After a woman's at home DNA test reveals multiple half siblings, she discovers a shocking scheme involving donor sperm and the popular and controversial fertility specialist, Dr. Donald Klein.
Yeah, so let's get into my rating. I gave this film a 3.5 out of 5, so closer to a 4. It was pretty good. Definitely one of those weird stories that you would think that never happened. And it was very interesting. Netflix, you guys did an amazing job, not only with the casting, because I think the actor who played Mr. Donald Klein, like, to me, sometimes I was forgetting that it was like who was the actual real person, because I was so used to looking at this actual actor playing him. But I think they did an amazing job telling the story, and then the daughter herself, Jacoba. Like, I feel like without her, this whole story wouldn't have came out. You know, she was kind of the catalyst, which is very, you hear stories of people who want to like look up their ancestry or look at like where they're from, but she was able to, really push and uncover something that was crazy. So, and she was older too, right? She was like in her late 30s, early 40s, something like that. She wasn't like a young lady. She was like an older woman, but just to see that she started everything, it was just interesting because he was doing it for so long. I think they say he started in the 80s. So that was very interesting. So, shout out to her for actually uncovering this, being one of the daughters. The next thing that also I want to give someone a shout out is Angela from Fox 59, being the only, journalist or radio station actually believing her and, wanting to put this story up, because everybody was either thinking this wasn't a story that was big enough, or, they wasn't, paying attention to it. They wasn't, because it didn't really sound right, even when you think about what he did. So she was like, no, this is a crime. Like, we need to actually tell this story. And I feel like when they got to her, it really wasn't that many people at that time. I think it was only a few that she had found siblings. And then as the story continued to grow, so many more people was coming out from looking at that news, that news flash. So really, really special shout out to her for actually, I think they said she was literally the only one, like, out of all the people she contacted, out of all the people that Jacoba contacted, that she was the only one. Angela was the only one who actually was like,
Oh, yeah.
We need to actually talk about this. Another thing that I guess you can say I didn't like, I guess these are some of my cons. So those two are my pros, and ultimately just how the kids stuck together, as Jacoba was beginning to find them. It was almost like they created this network. And it was so many of them, they kind of stuck together trying to figure out, just because it was really important for them to say, what if, I like the part when they had her walking in the streets, and she was, I don't know if this person's my sibling, my kid, like, what's going on, especially people I dated. Like, these are things that you want to know, because it was a small town that he did this in. So many people could have been related that you don't even know.
They didn't know.
And, so that was really, really weird. But yeah, so I didn't like how he tried to say to her, like, don't say anything, you're gonna ruin my life, or, my wife, stop, like, bro.
My wife's going to leave me.
Yeah, it was like, why do this in the first place? And then, now you trying to cry wolf or whatever. That was weird to me. Funny. I'm just like, bro, what are you talking about? You shouldn't have done that. And yeah, so another thing I guess I didn't like, and we talked about this briefly before we started, was how in Indiana, I guess they say he really didn't break the law by impregnating a woman. And he didn't get any really no justice, right? Like, nothing happened to him based off of this case.
Because they were trying to charge him and stuff. They were trying to charge him with like rape and stuff like that. But the prosecutors were like, basically, there was no law that prohibits fertility doctors from using their own sperm. I guess they didn't feel like they had to make that law, but there was no law, so he didn't commit a crime. So they couldn't really get him on that charge.
It was like a loophole, but when you think about it, it does not sound right. This person took his own semen and was putting it into women without their consent. So that's crazy. And also towards the end, I mean, this wasn't towards the end. This was kind of throughout the show. One of his coworkers, he was still like, I still respect him. It was like, he was still.
He said he was conflicted.
Yeah.
Because he went to school with him or something.
Yeah, I think he helped him or something.
Or practiced, or they did something. They either went to school together or they practiced. They worked as doctors together or something like that. So he couldn't see him in that light.
Yeah. Even, it was just, you know how they say with the people who are in power or they have wealth or whatever. It's like, oh no, they didn't do anything wrong. So I didn't like that part as well. And like I said before, I didn't like that he couldn't go to jail. That was just not right based off of what he did. And I like towards the end that they was saying that there were still people coming forward. That it was still a possibility of it being more kids that he have out there, because there's a lot of people who definitely did not, maybe because I think a lot of them were being found but based off of that 23andMe, so if you haven't put your DNA or whatever in that, there's a possibility. And I feel like some people just probably don't want to know, because that would feel crazy if you do it and it's like, oh wow, my wife or my husband could be my brother or my sister. So that was just a little weird. But yeah, so great job to Netflix for telling the story. It was definitely very interesting, and I would definitely recommend that you guys watch it.
So I'm going to give it 4 stars because I love a storyline and I love documentaries like this. I'm not going to give it a 5 because there wasn't any justice.
Yeah.
And it was just like very sick and twisted what he did. But I'm going to give it a 4. So like he had mentioned, Jacoba started it off. She was the only child conceived by donor sperm, and she said she always wanted a brother or sister. So she was like, let me just see if I might have 1 or 2 out there, because like it's a possibility that somebody else used the same donor sperm. So when she took the at-home test, it was shocking because she found out she had 7 half siblings, and the reason why that was crazy was because they're not supposed to use the same donor more than 3 times.
Yeah.
So she was like, okay, maybe I have 1 or 2 other siblings. But when she seen 7, she was like, wow, that's crazy. So that's when she started looking into it, and she started finding more and more and more. And they, at the end of the documentary, they said they were at a total of 94 siblings. And that's only, like he said, the people who have put their DNA into 23andMe. So there's probably tons of other people out there who didn't do that. So
because he started this in the 80s, like long time
he
ago.
was doing it for a long time, and there's probably a lot of people who it didn't take to or whatever, because it was some woman who was like, it took her 15 times to get pregnant. So there's probably a lot of women that he did that to who didn't get pregnant or whatever. But I'm sure that I feel like the number has to be way higher than 94, because that's only people who's done those at-home DNA kits. But, so she's the one who started it off. They also, the movie suggested that Dr. Klein may have been motivated by, he was a part of an extremist Christian group called Quiverful, and they encourage their followers to reproduce basically as much as possible to please God, like to be fruitful and multiply. So they think that he could have been motivated by that.
Yeah.
Like he said, they couldn't get him off of what he did because it wasn't a crime. So they did get him off of, he was brought to trial facing 2 counts of felony obstruction of justice because he lied.
Yeah.
Like, that's how they got him for lying. Like, they couldn't get him off of what he did. They got him because he lied. And he pled guilty and got a $500 fine. And that made me so mad because it wasn't justice.
At all.
And I'm not shocked or surprised. It's usually not justice. And then the judge was feeling bad for him.
Yeah.
She was already being, like, nice. I'm like, oh, my gosh. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, you should... Our jails are full. Like, you don't deserve to be... Whatever she was saying. And so I already knew he was about to get off. So he only got a $500 fine. They said he's still a big part of his community.
Yeah.
He's still, like, living the good life. Like, he's still living, like, fine or whatever. But what happened was in 2018, some of the siblings were lobbying, and that contribute to the passing of the Indiana fertility fraud law. So in Indiana, they passed this law, but that, like in all the other states, it's not a federal law, but they did pass that in Indiana. So when they passed that law, the medical licensing board actually revoked his license.
Oh, wow.
In 2018, but he had been retired since, they said, I think 2009 he stopped practicing.
Oh,
so he wasn't practicing anymore, but they revoked, he still, I guess, had his license, so they revoked it once the law passed.
That didn't affect him, though. This man is probably,
he was already
in his 70s
retired.
or 80s?
His 80s.
Yeah.
They said he's currently alive in his 80s, and he's active in his community. And then at the end, they had also said that there were other cases of doctors doing this as well.
That was strange.
Using their own sperm as well. And so my thing is, somebody actually, they got to talk to him for a little bit, and they asked him, why did he do this? And he was like, oh, these women were so desperate for a baby.
Yeah.
But my thing is,
Still not right.
you could have asked him, because I'm sure some of these women would have been like, yes, you're my doctor. I wouldn't mind you using your sperm in me. But you should have asked, is my thing. Because some women would have said yes, but some would have said no, because it was a lot of women who had their husband's sperm. Like, hey, I want my husband's sperm. You know what I'm saying? And he still used his. It's not like it was only women, because there were women who was just like, I'll use a donor or whatever, and they picked the donor. But there were women who were like, I want to use my husband's, and he still used his own.
Yeah.
So that's my thing, is like the consent thing. It's like, you didn't ask these people. I'm sure someone would say, yes, you're my doctor, I'll use yours. But he didn't ask. And that was my biggest thing, was the no consent thing. But overall, like I said, I gave it 4 stars. It was a really good documentary. I don't like that there wasn't justice, but that's real life.
Definitely.
And yeah, I think it was good.
So yeah, we would definitely recommend you guys watching this film. It's very interesting. Just like always, make sure you guys subscribe, comment, like, share, and we'll see you guys in the next one.